first crack of thunder rolled over Elder Ridge as Silas Boone urged his dapple mare higher, sleet stinging his cheeks like sleet shot. The copper sun had already bled into a bruise-colored sky, and every weather-wise bone in his 60-year frame warned him to find shelter fast. Then faint, off rhythm with the storm, came the jangling clang-clang of a handbell. 1, 2, 3 strikes, wobbly, desperate. Nobody rang iron this far north unless death was closing in. Silas reined up. Cold winds snapped the worn canvas of his drover's coat, but the sound told again, softer now, as if the storm itself were trying to drag it under. "Ride on, old man," a sensible voice muttered inside his skull. He'd survived too many border raids and cattle drives to chase phantoms at night. Yet another voice, quieter but sharper, the memory of his daughter's cough on her final night, cut straight through reason. If someone's hurt, you turn back. He pivoted Grace off the main trail, hooves crunching snow crust, following the bell toward the arroyo. Lightning spider-webbed overhead, bleaching the plateau white for a heartbeat, and there it was, a field wagon smashed against a dead cottonwood, its back axle dangling over a river now risen to a red frothing monster. A lone lantern swung beneath the wreck like a drunk star, and below the broken spokes, Silas spotted the bell, tied to the wrist of a young woman pinned beneath splintered boards. Silas threw the reins around a scrub stump, crawled forward on his stomach against the gale. "Easy, miss," he called. "I've got you." Her face, pale under mud streak and rain, lifted toward him. She looked no more than 27, but her gaze held a soldier's focus. One arm was trapped under the wagon tongue. The other kept the bell shaking even as the river roared a foot beneath her boots. "Cut the harness," she gasped. "If the wagon slides, we both go." Silas pulled his bowie and slashed at the tangled leather traces still hooked to a horse now long gone. Each snap of wet rawhide jarred the wagon, shoving it closer to the edge. The river below flashed copper under lightning, hungry. Silas wedged his shoulder between hub and rock, heaved, cursed, heard something in his old clavicle tear. But the shift gave him room to drag the girl free. As they rolled clear, another flash revealed the wagon's final plunge. It bucked once, tipped, and was swallowed whole, lantern and all, by the churning water. The bell went silent. They lay in the sleet a moment, lungs sawing frigid air. Then she pushed herself up, cradling a wrapped bundle against her chest. Silas saw the parcel was a medical satchel and tied around it by a leather thong. A stone, dark crimson shot through with threads of living light, shaped like a jagged wheel spoke. "I'm Silas Boone," he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "What do I call you, miss?" "Rebecca Whitmore," she answered, though breath caught on every syllable. "They call me Beck on the reservation." Her fingers brushed the stone as if checking it still breathed. "That bell was my last idea, thank you. But we're not safe yet." A bolt of lightning struck the ridge crest, close enough to slap Silas's ears. Grace whinnied from the scrub. Silas hauled Beck upright and half carried her toward the mare. "Storm's not giving us a choice. There's an abandoned cattle barn a mile east." She shook her head, pressing the blood quartz into his palm. The stone thrummed like a second pulse. "Riverbend Bluff, dawn. If this shard isn't placed on the council fire before first light, 4 nations will meet in anger, not in peace. We've 6 hours." Silas felt the stone's heat seep into his scarred hand. 4 nations, you say? That's a mighty tall trail in one night, girl." "Not girl," she said, voice steel tight despite the tremor. "Healer, and you're the only rider on this ridge." A gust whipped her cloak aside, revealing child-sized splints tucked in the satchel's pocket. Smallpox braces, Silas realized with a jolt. Lives hung on this journey. Children's lives. Far below, the river boomed like distant cannon. Silas lifted Beck onto Grace's saddle, swung up behind her, his wounded shoulder screaming. Sleet turned to needles of ice. He clicked his tongue. The mare surged forward into darkness. Thunder split once more, and Beck leaned back, whispering against the wind. "If we fail, dawn dies bloody." The storm swallowed the rest, leaving only the sound of hooves and a bell's ghost echo chasing them across the ridge. Will your hands steady the reins when heaven itself tries to shake you loose? Grace pounded through the sleet until the ridgeline broke into a shallow draw, where a weather-gray barn slumped against a hillside of juniper. Silas half-dragged, half-lifted Beck through the hanging door. Inside, the hayloft was empty save for a few moldy bales. Frost painted the rafters silver. Wind rattled loose boards, but the place was dry. He settled her on a grain box, struck a match, and lit a brass stable lantern left by some long-gone drover. Soft gold chased away the storm shadow, revealing the healer's trembling hands. "Let me see that side," he said. Beck winced as he peeled her coat back. A purple bruise spread beneath her ribs like spilled ink. Silas dug into his saddlebag for a strip of linen and a flask of rye. "This'll burn," he warned, and poured the liquor over the wound. She bit down on a knuckle but made no sound. While wrapping the bandage, Silas noticed the child-sized splints again. 4, lashed together with twine and labeled with chalked initials. "Cheyenne names?" he asked. "Little Sparrow, Laughing Brook, Blue Feather, and Tall Sun," she said, voice thin but steady. "Children at Broken Horse Agency. Smallpox hit 3 days ago. They need quinine powder and faith to breathe one more sunrise." She tapped the satchel. "Both are in here." Silas nodded, throat tight around memories of another sickness, another winter. His daughter Ellie's fever. The doctor's stagecoach stuck behind snowdrifts. His own prayers drowned in wind much like tonight's. He shook the thought aside and handed her the flask. "Drink. You'll warm faster from the inside." She took a swallow, coughed once, then pressed the blood-quartz shard against her sternum as if drawing courage from its glow. The stone's crimson veins pulsed, lighting her face. "How far to Riverbend from here?" she asked. 16 miles by my old survey map," Silas said. "2 river crossings out, 1 rope bridge left standing, if the flood hasn't taken it. We'll need fresh mounts. Grace can't haul double that far, not bleeding sky like this." Beck's gaze drifted to the barn's far stalls. Skeleton tack still hung on pegs, and luck for once was kind. A coal-black Mustang stood tethered behind a gate, snorting plumes of steam. Silas whistled low. "Someone's night pasture. If the owner's smart, he's at a poker stove, not out here." He grabbed a curry comb, calmed the animal, and found a cracked saddle that still held stitching. Hoofbeats thundered outside, multiple sets, crisp, organized. A trumpet note barked, echoing against the hills. Beck stiffened. Silas doused the lantern, pushing her behind stacked feed sacks. Through a knothole, he caught the glint of sabers. 10 Federal dragoons filed into the yard. At their head rode Captain Avery Pike, uniform buttons shining despite the sleet. Silas hissed, "Army's got no business this far off the rail line." Beck's whisper trembled. "They believe the shard is medicine contraband. Some call it witchcraft." Boots clomped on the porch boards outside the barn office. Pike's voice sounded clipped and certain. "Spread out. The healer's wagon was spotted upstream. We secure her and any artifacts. Friendly if possible." A sergeant yanked the main door. Lantern light lanced the dark. Silas slid his Colt from its holster, but kept the hammer down. Killing soldiers would bury them both. He scanned for another exit, only the loft window high above. Wind howled through cracked shingles. If they could reach the ladder unseen. A faint scrape overhead froze him. Hay sifted down like dust. Someone was already in the loft. Silas angled the Colt upward just as a leather boot shifted on a beam. The intruder's outline filled the lantern's pale halo. Broad shoulders, buffalo hide coat, shotgun cradled easy. Red Jack Crow. Silas had heard the name whispered in Dodge and Deadwood. Railroad muscle, hunter of people more than bounty. Crow's grin showed in the gloom. He laid a finger to his lips, as if sharing a private joke, then kicked the lantern hanging beside him. Glass shattered. Flaming oil spilled onto the loose hay. Fire whooshed upward, licking the rafters bright as sunrise. Soldiers outside shouted. The black Mustang reared, eyes rolling white. Beck clutched the satchel to her chest. Flames raced along the loft, raining sparks. Crow dropped like a cougar, shotgun leveled at Silas. "Evening, old-timer," he drawled over the roar, voice silk over lead. "Hand me the red rock and no one else fries tonight." Silas stepped in front of Beck. Colt raised through his heart hammered wild. Outside, Pike's men were pounding toward the blaze. The barn walls groaned as heat curled them. Smoke clawed at Silas's lungs. Grace screamed from the corral. Crow's finger tightened on the trigger. The fire cracked overhead, embers falling like angry stars. Silas measured the distance. 3 yards of open floor, his own shot versus Crow's double-aught scatter. No cover, no time. Beck's hand slid into his free one, pressing the blood quartz against his palm. Its pulse jumped. Alive, fierce. "Last chance," Crow warned, eyes gleaming orange in the firelight. Silas Boone drew a steady breath of smoke and scorched hay, braced his aching shoulder, and made his choice. Silas squeezed the Colt's trigger a heartbeat sooner than Crow expected, not aiming for the outlaw's chest, but the frayed rope suspending the hay tongs above him. The bullet snapped the line. A 10-pound iron hook plunged, slamming Crow's shotgun aside. The blast tore shingles from the wall instead of Silas's ribs. Before smoke cleared, Silas dragged Beck through the crackling doorway, flames snapping at their coats. The black Mustang reared, terrified, yet Silas vaulted into the saddle, hauled Beck up behind, and pointed the animal at the back wall. One hard kick and the board splintered. They burst into the storm. Cold air hit like river water. Behind them, the barn flamed orange against midnight blue, silhouetting soldiers scrambling for pump buckets. Crow cursed, rallying his hired guns. Pike shouted orders none could hear over the roaring blaze. Silas bent low, hands buried in the Mustang's wet mane. "Easy, boy. Give me 2 miles and you'll get all the oats Wyoming owns." The horse found its stride, hooves drumming frozen earth toward whispering mesa, sleet turning to snow that hissed around fetlock and spur. Half a mile out, rifle fire cracked. Red Jack's men on rented paints, cutting the corner of the draw. Silas felt Beck twist to look. "They'll ride us down in open flats," she yelled against the wind. "We need tree cover." "Trees are 6 miles south," he shot back, "but the mesa's full of hollow cuts. If we reach Broken Spoon Canyon first, they'll have to rope across." A round whined past his ear. The Mustang lunged faster. Behind, bugle notes pealed. Pike's dragoons joining the hunt, 2 squads fanning east. Storm and fire had welded enemies into a single relentless hammer. Snow glazed the mesa, reflecting moon shards between cloud breaks, painting the world in pewter and ghost white. Ahead, Silas spotted a double row of limestone hoodoos, wind-carved spires tall as gallows posts. He ducked them in, rains brushing stone, bullets sparked on rock. Echoes made 5 guns sound like 50. Beck pressed the satchel to her ribs, jaw clenched as each near mist-chipped stone dust into her hair. 5 minutes later, the hoodoos dropped away, opening onto the mesa's flat crown where wind ruled. Lightning strobed cobalt, showing the hunters strung out behind. Crow's 4 men on the left, Pike's soldiers to the right, everyone converging on one strip of snow-white prairie that ended in black void. Broken Spoon Canyon split the land in a crooked grin 200 feet deep. Silas saw the chasm's rim and felt the Mustang hesitate, sensing empty air ahead. He reined to a sliding stop inches from the drop. The canyon yawned 30 feet across, its far side a sheer wall crusted with ice. Beck gasped. "The bridge? Gone," Silas muttered. The rope span that once swayed here now dangled in shreds far below, victim of spring floods. Crow's riders galloped into sight, slowing as they recognized the trap. Behind them, Captain Pike's dragoons checked their mounts, carbines leveling. Snow dust spiraled between 2 forces and one dead end. Crow trotted forward, eyes glinting under a slouch hat ember-lit by lightning. "End of the trail, Boone. Hand over the stone. You and the girl ride out breathing." Silas's heart hammered, measuring the gap, the horse's strength, his rope coils, the slick rock lip. "I can't give what ain't mine," he called. "This shard belongs to the councils." Pike edged his horse alongside Crow. "Boone, stand aside. The army will escort Miss Whitmore. No blood needs spill. Beck slid off the Mustang, snow up to her shins. Wind whipped her cloak open, revealing the blood quartz glowing like heart fire. She raised it overhead. 4 nations wait on River Bend Bluff. Spill blood here and dawn breaks war. Crow laughed. War's good for rail money, sweetheart. He flicked his reins. 2 gunmen advanced, rifles ready. Pike signaled his sergeant. The dragoons shifted to firing line. Silas knew seconds remained. He swung from the saddle, yanked his lariat free, and tied one end to the Mustang's saddle horn, the other around Beck's waist. "Hold that satchel," he murmured. "Trust the horse." Without pause, he smacked Grace's flank. The Mustang charged the lip and leapt. Time slowed. Horse and heeler sailed over a void filled with swirling snow, lightning snapshotting their arc in blue fire. Mid-air, a rifle cracked. Silas felt a hammer blow slam his left shoulder. Pain burst hot, spinning him, but he kept both hands on the rope. Grace landed skidding on the far side, Beck tumbling into snow yet clutching the satchel. Silas planted his boots at the edge, rope bites searing his palms as momentum yanked him toward space. Ice gave under his heel. He slid, weight and gravity ripping through his wounded arm. The canyon opened beneath, a hollow roar of wind and distant water. Snow crystals drifted like ashes from a dying star. Rope twisted, spun him sideways. His boots scrabbled for purchase on icy rock. He slammed into the cliff face, shoulders screaming anew. Across the gap, Beck staggered up, eyes wide with horror. Lightning flashed, turning her tears into silver threads. She braced her feet, hauled the rope, trying to lift a man twice her weight. Behind Silas, Crow shouted for a shot. Pike barked, "Hold your fire!" But chamber bolts slammed home regardless. Silas glanced down. 30 feet of rope left, then nothing but night. Clouds cursed overhead. He clamped the rope in his good hand, dug the colt out with the other, and fired one-handed at a limestone outcrop above. The slug sparked, knocking loose a chunk of rock that fell beside him, yet gave him the second he needed. He swung his legs, caught a boot heel on a jutted ledge, pushed hard and surged upward. Beck hauled. Muscles trembled. Snow slipped. Another push, another heartbeat, and suddenly he sprawled onto solid ground beside her, world spinning. The Mustang stood trembling, but sure-footed. Beck knelt, pressing the blood quartz to Silas's bleeding shoulder. Heat rippled through torn muscle, pain dulled to a bearable throb. She whispered a prayer in Cheyenne he half recognized from old treaty camps. Across the chasm, Crow raged, gesturing wildly, but Pike's bugle echoed a recall. Soldiers wheeled left, seeking a longer route south. Crow cursed and spurred east to find shallows. Snow swallowed their hoofbeats. Silas forced breath into cold lungs, tasted copper. Beck squeezed his hand. "We're not safe," she said, voice shaking, "but we're ahead." He managed a grin, though every bone felt glass. "Then let's stay ahead. River Bend's still waiting." Thunder rolled low, and somewhere in the deep growl, Silas thought he heard dawn rustling its wings. Alive, but only if they kept riding. A cold gray hush lay over River Bend Bluff when Silas and Beck climbed the last shale switchback. The eastern horizon still smoldered ink black, but a single salmon thread split the clouds, promising daylight if not peace. Breath steamed from horse and rider alike. Silas felt every heartbeat in his bandaged shoulder, yet urged the black Mustang forward, hooves clacking on frost-slick stone. Below, the Big Tongue River coiled silver between snowfields, and on the narrow plateau ahead, a cedar-fed council fire burned low, its embers the color of old copper. 4 separate columns of riders waited, their silhouettes cut clean against the paling sky. To the north stood the Cheyenne, lances capped with white eagle plumes. East, the Lakota held blue-painted shields that caught stray sparks. South, the Arapaho wore buffalo cloaks dusted with snow. West, the Pawnee draped horsehair banners that fluttered like raven wings. Silence bound them together, no drum, no chant, only the hiss of wind across flint. Beck slid from the saddle, legs shaking. She opened the satchel and lifted the blood quartz shard. Its veins glowed brighter with each degree of rising light. Elder White Elk stepped forward from the Cheyenne line, braids silvered and eyes sharp. "Daughter?" he greeted Beck in accented English. You cross the dark. His gaze drifted to Silas. And the rider who braved the river. Silas tipped his hat, wincing as pain bit deeper. Could use a healer more than a hero's welcome, Elder. But dawn ain't waited, so let's finish this. Beck knelt, placing the shard on a flat stone inside the fire ring. The elder councils closed in. Forming a circle 4 riders deep, the cedar coals popped, brightening from ember to flame, as if inhaling the quartz's heartbeat. For a flicker, Silas believed they might succeed without farther blood. Hoofbeats hammered behind. He spun just as Red Jack Crow burst over the ridge, 8 rifles fanned in crescent, horse foam spraying. His buffalo coat billowed like storm cloud. 30 yards back, Captain Avery Pike galloped with 2 squads, sabers flashing a reflection of first light. The plateau, once empty, filled with gunmetal and anger. Crow reined hard, shotgun raised. Step aside, Graybeard. That ruby rock is railroad property now. His men leveled Spencer carbines at the fire circle. Pike's dragoons formed line of battle to Crow's right. Muskets trained on both tribes and outlaw alike. The air stank of cordite and cedar, fear and frost, all at once. White Elk lifted a palm. Blood spilled on this bluff awakens old ghosts. Stand down. Crow laughed, deep and raw. Ghosts don't buy track rights, old man. He kicked his mount forward, grabbing Beck by the collar, steel bowie at her throat. Hand me the shard or the healer paints sunrise red. Silas's pulse thundered in his ears. Pike barked, Crow! That woman is under federal protection. Yet his troopers kept rifles fixed on the circle, unsure which danger loomed largest. Frost crackled beneath hooves. Flames snapped. The first orange rim of sun cut the horizon. Beck's eyes found Silas. Pleading? No. Resolute. She held still, hands free, trusting him to read the moment. Silas flicked his gaze to the Mustang saddle horn where his last cartridge glinted. 1 bullet chambered, none to spare. His right arm trembled, the healed shoulder throbbed, but the blood quartz lay 8 paces away, sparkle intensifying with daylight. He felt its heat from here. Pike called again, voice cracking. Sergeant, do not fire until... Thunder interrupted. Crow's shotgun roared skyward in warning. Soldiers tensed, Lakota shields lifted, Pawnee archers knocked arrows that glowed feather bright in dawn's start. Silas exhaled every doubt. He holstered the Colt, stepped forward, palms bare. Crow, trade, me for her. The outlaw sneered. Silas continued. You want leverage on them councils. You'll need a witness white enough to sell it in Cheyenne court. I'm your man. He flung his hat aside, gray hair whipping. Let the girl finish what she came for. Crow appraised the offer. Blade icy against Beck's skin. 1 step closer and I carve a second grin under her chin. Wind fell dead. Even the river seemed to hush. Silas kept walking. 3 steps, 4. Crow's pupils twitched to match distance. Silas pivoted on the 5th step, grabbed a burning cedar branch and whipped it in an arc. Fire sparks flew into Crow's eyes. The outlaw recoiled, knife slicing air. Beck dropped, rolling free. At the same instant, Silas hurled the branch onto Crow's saddle blanket. Naphtha-soaked buffalo hide erupted in flame. The horse reared, screaming. Pike's troopers fired a ragged volley. Tribal arrows streaked. Smoke and gunpowder swallowed color. Only flashes of steel and scarlet bled through. Silas barreled into Crow, shoulders shattering anew, driving both men to the ground. Crow swung the bowie. Silas caught his wrist, twisted till bone popped. The knife clattered away. Beck crawled to the shard, lifted it high, then slammed it onto the firestone. A dull crack split the morning. Quartz fractured into 4 equal tongues of light that shot across the circle like comet tails, embedding at the boots of each elder. The ground quivered. Flame whooshed skyward, suddenly emerald, bathing warriors and soldiers in an eerie glow. Every rifle lowered as if gravity doubled. Crow ceased struggling, eyes saucer-wide at the green fire curling from his coat. Pike dismounted, stunned. The elders stepped forward, each lifting a shard that pulsed to their heart rhythm. White Elk intoned, "The wheel mends what the knife breaks. The river sees who stands for life. Silas staggered to one knee, blood-soaking bandage, yet felt warmth flood his battered veins. Beck pressed her palm to his chest where the shard's earlier glow had left a crimson imprint, now pulsing in time with his own heart. Sun cleared the ridge, gold pouring over emerald flame, until both colors twined into purest white. Smoke melted into sky, wind returned, gentle. Crow lay unconscious, wrists bound by Lakota rawhide. Pike ordered his men to sling rifles, remove helmets. Silence settled, not of tension, but of reverence. White Elk addressed Pike. Your law or mine, either spills red. Let the healer walk the middle trail. Pike, chest heaving, removed his gloves and extended a hand. Agreed, he turned to Silas. Boone, you and your Mustang outran 2 armies. Suppose we let peace keep up. Silas tried to grin and tasted iron instead. Peace rides faster on full bellies and empty coffins, Captain. You hold your end, these folks'll hold theirs. Beck approached each elder, offering the medical satchel. White powder, quinine vials, splints, hope in canvas. The councils accepted, then placed their shards into a medicine wheel of fresh-cut cedar, binding it with rawhide until 5 equal spokes awaited a missing center. Elder Sky-turning stone beckoned Silas. The 5th piece is yours, Rider. Heart of the wheel belongs to the hand that risks the void. Silas opened his palm. A fragment smaller than a thumbnail rested there, still glowing, warm, steady, alive. He set it in the wheel's hub. Cedar cracked softly, sealing stone to wood. Beck knelt by the new symbol, tears gathering. The treaty road opens, she whispered. Behind them, sunrise finally burst unobstructed, blazing amber across a sky scrubbed clean by storm and fire. Light struck troop helmets, tribe feathers, outlaw chains, all equal under morning. Silas closed his eyes, breathed cedar smoke and new day. Somewhere inside that breath echoed Ellie's lost lullaby, no longer a weight, but a wind lifting him forward. Opening his eyes, he found Beck watching, twinkle of dawn reflecting in both their scars. Still a stretch to Broken Horse Agency, he muttered. We'll get the medicine by noon, she answered. And after? Beck smiled, sudden and bright. After, we ride wherever bridges need building. Silas tipped his head toward the converging elders and soldiers forming a loose column, their banners interlaced. Looks like we just built the first. He swung into the Mustang's saddle, grimacing but firm. Beck mounted behind, arms steady around his waist. The procession started south, snow crunching under dozens of hooves moving as one. From Bluff's edge, the shattered barn smoke had drifted this far, faint but present, a reminder of night's chaos. Silas glanced back once. In the distance, charred timbers still smoldered, yet above them new smoke rose straight and blue. Council fire at peace. He turned to face the sun, and for the first time in years the light did not hurt his eyes. 6 months later, dawn rolled over the high plains as mild as a hymn. Silas Boone stood on the split-rail porch of the newly raised crossing clinic, coffee tin warm in his hands, and watched the town that had sprouted from nothing but treaty smoke. Elder Crossing now straddled the confluence where Bluff met river. Cedar cabins, canvas trade stalls, a telegraph post ticking faint code, and, most precious, one low cedar schoolhouse, whose bell chimed sweeter than any cavalry trumpet. The morning smelled of prairie sage and fresh sawn pine. Snow had long since bled away, replaced by blankets of purple lupine and yellow wild flax that fluttered like prayer flags. Beyond the roofs, the river shimmered silver, no longer a barrier but a mirror carrying sky straight through the valley. Children spilled from the schoolyard chasing a ragwound ball, their laughter lifting with chimney smoke. 3 bore Cheyenne braids, 1 wore Pawnee beadwork, 2 sported cast-iron knuckle guards whittled by Union farriers. No one cared whose blood traced where. Here they were simply crossing kids, quick to laugh, quicker to share biscuits swiped from cookpots. Silas set down his coffee and checked the fence rails for splinters. His shoulder ached less these days, the crimson imprint of the blood quartz having faded to a thin scar the size of a thumbnail. If he pressed it, he could still feel the shard's faint pulse, steady, reassuring, like the land itself agreeing to one more sunrise. Hoofbeats approached. Grace, the dapple mare, trotting easy under Corporal Finn Mallory, who, since resigning Army service, now hauled school books and seed corn instead of rifles. "Morning, Mr. Boone," Finn called, dismounting with a sack of flour over one shoulder. "Teacher says thanks for the cedar chalkboards. Kids broke 2 already practicing algebra." Silas chuckled. "Boards are easy. Getting them to love numbers, that's on her." He pointed toward the square where a circle of rawhide-bound cedar stood tall. The 5-spoke wheel, each shard slot glowing when first placed, now mellowed to rose amber. Beneath it lay an earthen hearth that never fully cooled, tended day and night by alternating tribes. Finn followed his gaze. "Wheel sure draws travelers. We had a railroad survey team visit last week, asked permission to water horses, ended up joining a Pawnee bean roast instead." The young man's grin curved. "They left swearing to lay track around the bluff, not through it. Good track runs where folks agree to sell, not where they're forced," Silas said, then waved Finn toward the mess hall, where the dragoons turned carpenters were already hollering for flapjacks. The clinic door opened behind him. Rebecca, Beck. Whitmore stepped out, apron dusted with chicory flour, eyes bright despite a night of tending coughs. She handed Silas a fresh biscuit and nudged him aside so she could fasten a red and white banner above the doorway. "Open for healing," painted in steady letters. "Morning rounds start early," she said, voice warm as hearthlight. "Elder White Elk's knee is acting like thunder again." Silas bit into the biscuit, butter running warm. "I'll hitch Grace to the wagon after breakfast," he offered. Beck's gaze softened, taking in the town, the river, the lupine sea. "Remember how quiet this bluff was the night we arrived? Just firelight and fear." She touched the faint quartz glow on Silas's shoulder. "Funny how a story can bend from gunfire to lullabies in one turning of seasons." Silas considered that. "Takes more than a story. Takes folks willing to ride the bad parts." He looked toward the schoolyard where 2 Lakota girls now helped a Union blacksmith's son untangle kite string. "Ride 'em, mend 'em, then ride again if the trail buckles." A shout rose from Main Street. Captain Avery Pike, no longer in blue but in plain work denim, stood beside Red Jack Crow, now shackled yet grinning through a week's growth of beard. Today was transport day. Crow would be escorted to Fort Laramie for tribunal under joint civil tribal law. Pike signaled Silas. "State witness, you ready?" Silas tipped his hat. "Soon as the healer's done with her rounds," Beck shot him a wry glance. "Just don't let Crow charm the courthouse. He's smoother than hot tar." She headed to her buckboard half loaded with quinine, blankets, and fresh bread donated by the Pawnee bakers. Silas followed her to cinch the harness. "You sure you don't need a rider with that shoulder?" She patted his good arm. "You've fences to mend and a wheel to guard. Besides," her smile broke sunlight wide, "I've 4 nations riding escort." Across the square, Cheyenne, Lakota, Arapaho, and Pawnee horsemen waited. Beadwork shining, spears capped in white cloth, an honor guard for medicine. She clicked her tongue. The buckboard rolled off, children waving, lupine bowing in wind. Silas watched until dust swallowed the wheels, then turned back to the porch, tugging his vest straight. He lifted his gaze to the 5-spoke wheel. The center shard, once raw with green fire, now glowed gentle amber, matching dawn's reflection on the river. He thought of Ellie's forgotten lullaby, of barns burning in canyon voids, of treaties signed in green fire. All of it funneled into this moment where the wind smelled of bread and cedar smoke, and a town born from fear sang itself awake. Silas Boone picked up his hammer, slung it across his good shoulder, and stepped into the yard where a new split rail awaited. The work was never done, and that was all right. The fence would stand taller than mistrust, and the gate would swing wide enough for anyone choosing the middle trail. And you, listener, when the storm finally clears, what fence will your hands raise before sundown?